Journal continues.
Our first guest of the morning, Representative Jeff Denham, a Republican of California in the 10th District, serves on the Agriculture and Veterans Affairs Committee. Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you give a little bit of your own personal take, being from the part of the country that you are when it comes to immigration, and kind of parlay that into what's going on, especially when it comes to the border?
Sure. I mean, certainly California is one of those border states that has a much higher immigrant population. We're the largest ag state, so we've had guest worker programs that have worked in the past. And have a larger immigrant population because of that as well. But I'm also married to a first-generation Puerto Rican Mexican it's personal for me. It is a personal issue. I helped my father to become a citizen. It was one of my proudest moments to see him take his citizenship test and go through the process. So we know, from a personal level, but from a community and from a state level, that our immigration system is broken. I think the entire country is starting to feel that now with this border surge that we're seeing with 160,000 unaccompanied minors coming through. Now the whole world, or the whole nation and the whole world is looking at America. What are we going to do with this problem?
The president asking for almost $4 billion. What's going on the southern border? What do you think of the figure, and do you support it?
Well, it's a figure that's grown very, very quickly. I mean, the president initially came out and said it was going to be a $2 billion number. I want to see what's in that number. I believe that we absolutely need an appropriation. This is an emergency condition. It's a humanitarian crisis. We've got to resolve it quickly. These retention centers that are popping up all across the nation on our military bases, in churches, in different locations where kids are being housed in gymnasiums is not a good approach. So we're going to need an appropriation that not only deals with this crisis in a humane way, but we also actually secure our border in the same round. So I think we're going to see a bill here very shortly that deals with both.
Do you support sped up deportation immigration hearings as being called for by some?
I do. I think the biggest thing that should be funding in this is the courts. Right now, that's the smallest amount of funding in this overall bill. I think it takes it to $65 million, which would be enough for 55,000 by the administration's numbers, 55,000 cases. Well, if we've got 160,000 coming in, we obviously need to beef up our courts much, much more than that. So just doing this catch and release program where they're just sending people back into communities and saying, please show back up in the next couple of years, does not work. I think the American public's going to be outraged as this crisis continues on. We've got to resolve it quickly.
Where does Speaker Boehner stand as far as immigration reform, and do you agree or disagree with the positions he's taken on it?
He's been very supportive. We've had a number of conversations in our conference. He knows that this is something that we've got to get done, but he's going to do it in a respectful and mindful manner. I'm somebody who's been pushing. I want to see top-to-bottom reform, so I am pushing very hard, not only on first, securing our border, but secondly, we've got to have a guest worker program. We've got to have E-Verify. We've got to talk about the 11.5 million that are here today that have gone through our schools, that have our community, that consider themselves Americans, but do not have a way to work. And
what should be done about them then? The ones currently here.
Well, I think there's multiple different solutions. I mean, first of all, the kids that have gone through our schools that were brought here to no fault of their own, I think that they should have an expedited path. So I've got the Enlist Act, for example. I served my country proudly. I served with immigrants. We've always had immigrants serving in our military. Why wouldn't we let the best and brightest out of our school system that can pass a background check, that speak English, that can meet all of the military criteria? If the military would like to take them and that helps to bolster our national defense, why wouldn't we allow them to serve? And I mean, there's no better way to show your faith and your commitment to a country than to serve in our military.
Where is the Enlist Act going?
Right now, we've got a ton of co-sponsors, both sides of the aisle. We're hopeful in this whole debate with border surge and with border protection that we actually get the Enlist Act passed at that same time. That will be the first issue that deals with any type of pathway. But obviously, we've got 11.5 million here and growing that we need to resolve. Those that have been here for decades. I mean, this is a multi-generational problem now. This has gone on for over 30 years.
If I understand it correctly, the Enlist Act you worked on with Kevin McCarthy at one time, who's now the House Majority Leader.
And he's a co-author, yes.
And so do those better your prospects for the acts being heard now that he's Majority Leader?
I think our biggest challenge with immigration is timing. Timing and the fact that there is no deadline. I mean, this place operates with deadlines. I mean, when there's the ag bill, the farm bill that came up, there was a dairy cliff that came up in it. We always hear about the fiscal cliff. When deadlines hit, Congress acts. There is no deadline with immigration, which is why this has been pushed out for 3 decades now, both by Republican and Democrat administrations. We are starting the debate now. People realize that this is a crisis, and because we have a border surge, there is now a date for resolving this problem. I think we take up the Enlist Act at that same time, and I actually think that that helps to break the wedge to talk about all of these other issues and to actually engage the American public in talking about it as well.
When you talked about the other issues, you mentioned those currently here that are not supposed to be here. Sometimes the term amnesty gets tagged to that kind of effort. What does that mean to you? Or when you hear that term, what do you think?
You know, when I hear amnesty, I think of a freebie. You know, somebody that's just going to give you a free pass. There is nothing like that in any of the bills that we're seeing right now. We need to have something that is very strong, that it follows the rule of law, that has a process and a procedure. I mean, even H.R. 15, which is widely debated around the Hill here, has a 13-year pathway that has several safeguards that you've got to jump through during that 13 years. So you're still following at the back of the line. You got to come to realization that there's not going to be a self-deportation. There aren't going to be, tons of buses that come and start picking people up. So if we've got this situation that's been here for 30 years, why not resolve it?
Even this morning in the Washington Times, Senator Rubio saying that it was the Senate's version of their immigration bill, saying it wouldn't stop currently what's going on at the border today.
It would not. No, they're two separate problems, which is why we've improved on the Senate bill by adding the McCall border protection bill. So we've got to secure the border. We've got to have metrics and measurements to ensure to the American public that it is secure before we move through any of the other measures. Part of the challenge, I think, for Republicans is the concern that this president might implement different pieces of the law without addressing the border first. I mean, this is a president that said in 2011 the border is absolutely secure. In fact, he chastised Republicans during the elections on how secure the border was. It's obvious the border is not secure today. It's going to take a change in law, and not only the 2008 law, which the president supported on human trafficking, take actually putting in the same types of safeguards that we have along our southern border in California, where you've got 2 fences, or you've got cameras, or you've got motion detectors. And we have all of that between San Diego and Tijuana, but you don't have that in the Rio Grande. You don't have that in Texas, and you can put in some of those measures. We also don't have a situation where Border Patrol can patrol our entire southern border. I mean, just having the ability. I mean, in Texas, they've got millions of acres of interior and Department of Forestry property that Border Patrol can't go into. And so, that seems to be the easiest place to go through, is where the police or the Border Patrol aren't patrolling.
Representative Jeff Denham is with us until 8:30 to talk about issues going along the southern border and immigration reform overall. The numbers on the screen will be 202-585-3880 for Democrats, 202-585-3881 for Republicans, and 202-585-3882 for independents. And if you live in the border state, your perspective welcomed on a separate line, 202-585-3883. Our first call is from Alabama. This is Pat on our Republican line. Go ahead. You're on with the representative.
Thank you. We've got a facility at Guantanamo Bay where we housed Haitian refugees a few years ago. Why can't that be used to house these children? We could also help the president eliminate the prisoners there by training them as child care workers and let them earn some money to fly themselves out. The children could be released from Guantanamo when their parents pay for airfare to take them home. Thank you.
Hey, Pat, thank you for the question. Well, first of all, I don't know that I want Al-Qaeda or the Taliban that are in Guantanamo as the best daycare for these kids that are coming across. I think we've got to deal with this crisis in a very humane way. Certainly housing them in our military bases may be a short-term solution, but 160,000 is such a huge number that Guantanamo could only handle a small percentage of that. In California, we've got a naval base that is holding 400, but they're doing between 400 and 1,000 per different military installation, and now trying to reach out beyond those military installations because those are inadequate to go to churches or colleges that have a gymnasium or different situations. And the fundamental responsibility, I think, of the federal government, first of all, I think the president needs to send a very strong message very quickly. It should have happened already. Dealing with the other heads of state, just to say, look, we're going to send your residents back to you. We will work with you to handle this in a humane way, but we can't just continue to have this influx coming across our border. The president should also be working with Mexico to make sure that their southern border is secure. Because in the past, they've had much stronger policies, but in 2008, they changed their policies to give people coming across basically a 2-week visa, and they realized very quickly that over 80% of the people that were getting those 2-week visas were not coming back across their southern border again. So our partner, just like we have a partner with Canada, Mexico should be working with us as well. But we have an obligation as Congress to secure this border and to appropriate the funds necessary and to actually stop this surge once and for all. Like Pedro said, the immigration bills that we have seen would not stop this problem. And so we've got to have a separate bill that deals with not only the 2008 law that was passed, but also making sure that our border is secure.
Mike Rogers said that the initial request of $4 billion is a lot of money. Where do you see the request going legislatively?
I think it's hard to say on whether it goes up or down. It depends on how strong of a border security bill is in there and whether or not we have actual offsets for that new expenditure. So I would expect the funding level to go down, but again, I think it depends on everything else that's in that bill. Right now, I think the courts is far too low, and we want to see actually the Border Patrol dollars that they're actually going to where the Border Patrol is telling us they need to go.
Katie, Texas is a border state. That's where Wayne is, Democrat. Hello, Wayne. Good morning.
I hear all the time, secure the border, but yet nobody comes up with a plan to secure the border. Once in a while, they'll build a fence or they'll do something. Well, they just go under it. The only way they're going to secure that border is to build a minefield, I think, a half a mile wide along the whole damn border. Maybe that'll secure it. But nobody else says secure it, but they don't have an idea to secure it. Thank you.
Well, Wayne, thank you. I think a minefield's probably a little extreme. But, we're seeing plenty of plans. There is no shortness of ideas here. The McCall bill that has bipartisan support, in fact, it went out of committee unanimously, actually has the safeguards in there that would make sure that Border Patrol is measuring this using metrics that would have over 90% efficiency on catching everybody that is coming across. I mean, right now, while we're talking about the 160,000 kids that are projected to come across in the next year, that's still only 25% of our problem. So we still have a whole another 75% that are coming across our border today that we need to secure. So, yes, it is very different. I mean, in the cliffs, where we've got cliffs and gorges in Texas, it doesn't make sense to put up fences. And other areas where you've got Department of Interior, we need to have roads and allow Border Patrol to go in there. And even in San Diego, where we've got 2 fences and the cameras and the motion detectors, we still have people that will jump one fence and cut through the other, which is why we've got to have Border Patrol agents ready to go out there and not only re-secure that fence, but to make sure that they are actually tracking and catching those people that are coming across illegally.
From Spring Hill, Florida, Carol, good morning.
Yes, good morning. First of all, I must say that I myself am an immigrant. I'm the daughter of a World War II war bride and an American sailor. We've also been foster kids for many years, and I think there's a couple of issues that we're overlooking. We have an immigration process not only to let people into the country, but to make sure that the people we're letting in are people who are not going to be detrimental to this country. I've seen my mother's immigration papers. My father literally had to promise that she would never break the law, that she would never be a burden on the country, and I think we've kind of gotten away from what the process of immigration is. Now, there's a part 2 to this. People who come across the border undocumented tend to live in underground communities. The children are molested. The people are, the wives are beaten, but nobody calls the police because they're here illegally. So by not containing this flow of undocumented immigrants, we're not only creating or adding to this underground society thing, but it's also dangerous to the people on this side of the country. That's why we have an immigration process. As far as the deadline, our government made the deadline when we threw the Brits out and declared our independence. We just need to make sure now that we can do this, and I think it needs more manpower on the border, to close this. And I think part of the problem could be solved if we would simply hire Mexican officials to guard the border on the other side to make sure they didn't get that close.
Carol, thanks.
Thanks, Carol. Well, first of all, let me start with where you finished. That has been proposed. I just don't believe in funding another government. I think that we ought to be working with the other government so that they actually fund securing their side of the border. I mean, there's a lot of corruption in Mexico that we should be concerned with. They're having challenges with their police force and their military with dealing with all of these big drug cartels. And so, yes, I do think that they should be policing both their north and their south border themselves. But I don't think that that would necessarily solve our problem. In this bill that we're talking about, this new appropriation, there would be more manpower that we'd be putting at the border. But yes, I agree. We've got to have a rule of law and a process that fits the American public so that we know how many people are coming in, what countries they're coming from, what specific skills are they bringing to create a greater America, and those that are already here today. Yes, there is not only a underground to say, but it is a real public safety issue. I talk to my sheriff in my home county all the time about the crimes that go on that are unreported. That's why we've got to have a pathway both for a registered provisional status, which would be the first 6 years, then a second provisional status, then legal permanent residence. We need to have this 13-year process so we not only have back taxes and back fines paid, which are important and would help us to get rid of our debt, but having background checks and making sure that people are actually working, having jobs, and not taking government subsidies. I mean, all of the things would help our economy, would help our country, and create safer communities.
Sherry, well, first of all, the breakdown of the White House request is $1.8 billion to care for unaccompanied children. For transportation and detention, that's another $1 billion. To hire immigration judges, $64 million. And to what you've been talking about a bit this morning, $433 million for border agent pay. Is that enough?
I think the court system, $65 million is way too low. I mean, even by their numbers, the amount of cases that they say they can go through in an annual basis is far too low, knowing how big of a surge this is. I mean, part of the challenge is we've got to triage and assess the situation immediately as it comes across. So we can decide, has somebody come across with an ID or a birth certificate, can we actually verify what country they're from? Can we verify whether this is a true asylum case of somebody that is fleeing their country because of some type of persecution or political persecution, and really define the issue? If somebody's just coming here to try to cut in line, we've got to make some decisions around that as well. And right now, just releasing them to not just a parent. I mean, we used to take unaccompanied minors, and Department of Homeland Security would go out to the home of the parent, make sure that it's a safe environment, make sure it really is the parent. Now, they're in such an emergency situation that not only does a parent not have to come, but it could be an aunt or an uncle or a cousin or even a friend. So our policies have gotten very, very lax because of this emergency crisis.
Here's Sherry from Florida, independent line for Representative Jeff Denham.
Yes, sir. First of all, the administration contracted for transportation for these children in January for July, knowing exactly how many would be needed, how many children would be here. Second of all, this all goes back to DACA, an executive order signed by this administration. These 3-year-olds are not traveling all this way by themselves through jungles and borders to get to the Mexican border. It would cost a lot less to medically check these children out and return them to their country of origin. We already give billions in humanitarian aid to these countries. We do not need any more illegal aliens in this country. We have children and families in need here. We have veterans who come home and can't get the care that they need. We do not need to spend 1 penny more on this mess. Send them home.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the call. I mean, certainly you can tell by the emotional voice, this is a very, very emotional issue. But we're going to deal with this in a very humane way. I mean, obviously there are little kids, kids that we need to make sure that they are finding a safe place back in their home country or with relatives here. But the majority of this problem with the unaccompanied minors, I think 77% of them are between 14 and 18 years old. So, again, we've got to triage the situation. There's going to be different circumstances, but it has gone on way too long already. It should have been stopped very, very early on. Now to continue to reserve commercial airlines to ship people to different states across the country is creating not only a backlog for immigration policy, but creating a real situation for different states across the country.
Tony is living on a border state in Texas. He's on our Democrats line. Tony, good morning.
Good morning to you. Hey, Congressman, I have a question. You keep saying you need to secure the border before there's any immigration reform, but you haven't said how you propose to secure the border. And the things I've heard you say seem like it's going to take a very long time before we even get to the immigration reform package. And also, I don't think the children are really an immigration problem. It's a refugee problem. I think that goes back to the law that President Bush passed, giving them asylum. So I think that both of the major problems we have in the country are stem from the Bush administration, with the Iraq war coming back on us again, with the refugee law passed where they could get asylum in the United States, but President Obama is getting all the blame for this, when these are actually Bush policies, laws that he put into action, and nobody's addressing that.
Well, I always find it entertaining that after 5 years of presidency, everything still gets blamed on Bush. But don't forget that this is not only a Senator Feinstein bill, but then Senator Obama also voted on this bill. So this is certainly a bipartisan bill that nobody could have ever expected this type of surge or this type of humanitarian effort. But it is here. I mean, crises come up. Laws have unintended consequences at times. We've got to make sure that, okay, we've got this problem now, let's go address it. And the president should be doing that from an executive level, dealing with the other heads of states, dealing with Mexico and their south border. And then as Congress, we need to also make sure that we pass this border security bill that has true not only metrics and measurements, but has the funding in place to where we can put fences where we need fences, have cameras where we need cameras. And I would still say for Texas, the biggest issue is allowing the Border Patrol to actually secure the border or patrol the border or along that Texas border where they've got Department of Interior, where right now they can't go into those millions and millions of acres where we've got people coming up. So we've got a challenge ahead of us. It's going to take both parties to come together and find an American solution.
The guest not only represents the 10th District of California, it says that you and your family own an almond farm in Merced County and operate Denham, an agricultural container supply firm. As far as the agricultural world, how dependent on is it as far as immigration policy is concerned?
From an ag perspective, especially for California, we have a large number of crops that do take a migrant workforce. Some of the tree fruit is very seasonal, and when that season hits, if you don't have the labor there, we won't have those fresh fruits and vegetables. Lettuce, strawberries, very intensive, labor-intensive crops. And we've always had guest worker programs. Every industrialized nation has guest worker programs. But along with that guest worker program, we also need an E-Verify, so we actually know who's taking those jobs so that it's Americans first. But when we have jobs that Americans won't take, we need to make sure that those businesses don't leave our country for somewhere else where they've got a cheaper labor, but that we actually bring a labor force in on a guest worker program so that somebody can come in, they can work, they can send money home, they can go back home when their job is done.
Here is Yvonne from Florida. Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. Your guest in the very beginning, he mentioned something about Congress taking up an Enlist Act in order to help these illegals become citizens. They could enlist in our armed forces. And I'm wondering, how in good conscience can Congress even think of doing something like this for the illegals when we have our soldiers fighting out in the battlefield and they are receiving pink slips? These are men and women who were hoping to make the armed forces their career, and they, lo and behold, one bright day find out that they have been fired. Thank you, and I'll take your answer off the line.
Well, thank you, Yvonne. I am a proud veteran that was willing to put my life on the line for my country. Served in Desert Storm and Somalia. Followed a family tradition of other members of my family that served even back before World War II. So it is a family tradition. But in our entire line of history of serving in the military, we've always had immigrants. And my grandfather served with immigrants in World War II. Were we actually going over to Europe and enlisting people in Europe before they'd ever even stepped foot into the United States? When I served in Desert Storm, I served with a great deal of Filipinos that were gaining their citizenship through serving in our military. So my question is, if you've gone through our school system, if you have passed a background check, if you've met all of the military criteria, if the military says you are the best and brightest, we want you to come into our military to strengthen our national defense, why would we encourage that? There's no greater act of patriotism than being willing to serve your country. Now, I don't agree with the pink slips. I know that some of the officers are receiving those right now. As we are downsizing from some of these wars, we need to make sure that we have jobs for all of our veterans. I'm on the Veterans Committee as well, and we're dealing with some of these extreme veterans issues that should not be happening to our veterans. But as we move forward, we're still going to be enlisting men and women coming out of high school. I just believe that those that have gone through our school system, whether they've been undocumented or not, if they were brought here by no fault of their own, they ought to be able to enlist into our military. Before 1860, over half of our military was immigrants. And since then, we've had over 660,000 immigrants serving side by side in every war that we've ever fought in.
One of those VA issues which was reported on yesterday was the status of the VA bill. The CBO says they've reduced the estimate about $38 billion per year. What's the health bill? What would it do? And talk about the cost involved.
The health bill would actually allow veterans that are not getting immediate care through the VA to actually be able to see a private physician. I've got a bill on that myself. By their own guideline, their own metrics that they've set, it says 14 days. If a veteran has called us and they have not seen care within 14 days, they ought to be able to go to a private practitioner. All we're saying is it shouldn't be it should be something that they have a choice to do immediately. They shouldn't wait for approval. It should be the VA. If they can't accomplish their own mission by their own measurements, then the VA ought to be sending them out to get that care. With the CBO score, I just disagree with it. The CBO comes up with these different scores on what different things are going to cost. In this case, they're saying, well, if you give the veterans the benefits that they deserve, it's going to cost more money. Well, we reappropriate more money for the veterans every single year. In fact, it is one area of the budget we always over-appropriate. So just saying that the veterans are going to get the benefits that they've been promised for all of these years should have a higher score does not make a whole lot of sense. These are still veterans that if they're qualifying for VA benefits, then they would also be qualifying for Medicare as well. So you're transferring them from one government program to another. The CBO score shouldn't matter.
Here is Bill from Pennsylvania, Republican line. Good morning.
Good morning, Pedro. Let me say a couple things to the congressman because I came from Europe. I'm a European. I've been here 55 years. I work very hard, and I want to explain to him what he's doing. What he's doing, he's playing games with everybody else, Democrats and Republicans, which they're destroying this country. When I came in this country, I was sponsored by my uncle in Chestnut Hill. It took us 3 years to come over here. I had to get a green card from the American Embassy. I had to get a passport. I came here 27 hours with the airplane, DW in New York. Then I had to wait 5 years. After 5 years, I became an American citizen, and I had to learn how to speak English. This is the way you come in, sir, when you're talking about immigrants. You don't have no idea what immigrants are. And the immigrants are for in this country that came the right way, not the way you're doing. so you can make money in your pocket. So I called Ron Paul. I talked to Ron Paul. I sent a letter to Congressman Pitts making a fool out of him because he talks out of his head. And I am Republican, real Republican. I'm talking about Republican, like go Republican, not phonies like you guys. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well,
you're destroying this country. You're not American.
Okay, we'll let our guest respond.
I was willing to serve my country. I think that makes me American enough. Work side by side. A lot of people are willing to bleed for this country and put their lives down for our Constitution, for our freedoms. So I've never had my patriotism questioned in this process. But let me answer your question directly. 5 years? Yes, that's a long time for you to wait. I'm glad that you went through that process the correct way. We can go ahead and have de facto amnesty for decades to come. We've had it for 30 years. We've got people coming across our border. We can continue to ignore this problem. We can continue to see our debt go through the roof. We can wait until our economy collapses, or we can do the American solution and fix our border, secure our border, and take care of the people that are here today, creating a greater America. Now, we've got 11.5 million people that are here today. So we can make a choice. Do nothing, de facto amnesty, or actually address our problem in a way that makes sense. Pay fines. Pay back taxes, sign up for provisional status, pass a background check, get a job, and no government subsidies. And if you can do that for 6 years on a provisional status on a visa, then you can go back and you apply and make sure the government can verify that you paid your taxes, that you paid your back fines, that you've had a job that entire 6 years, that you can still pass a background check, you haven't broken any laws, and that you still are not taking any type of government subsidies. Your reward for that is you get another 4 years of a temporary visa. So now you're 10 years. Now you're twice the length of time that it took you to go through the legal process. Again, we want you to go to the back of the line. We don't want to create an unfair system. After that 10 years, after you've passed 2 background checks, after you've paid your taxes and fines for over a decade, after you've had a job and been fully employed for 10 years, and that can be verified, and after you have made sure that you've been on no government subsidies, you've broken no laws, after 10 years, you can file for legal status. At a minimum, it will take you 3 more years after that before you can sign up to be a citizen. Now, that's one bill right now. That is the bill that's talked about all the time as some of the provisions in the Senate bill. That is the bill that's talked about as a Democrat bill. The worst case scenario of any bill that we're talking about in Congress right now, you not only have to go through all of those hoops, all of those challenges, jump through all of those fines and taxes, but it takes you at a minimum 13 years. Now, some may say that's not long enough. Maybe it needs to be 15, maybe it needs to be 20, but it is time to have that debate, because people that are out there saying do nothing is not an American solution. Doing nothing is amnesty, and we've got to stop that.
Catherine from Victoria, Texas, you're next.
Yes. I think maybe we have an emergency situation now, which has not been heard of, and putting Border Patrol does not stop people from crossing the river. You're going to have to get people to stop coming across the river, because if they set 1 foot on this land, then you have an immigrant problem to figure out, and I don't think we have enough money to house all of the people, the tens of thousands. It's going to become hundreds of thousands coming over. I know that sounds horrible, but now Syria is an invading country. These are not invaded countries. These are countries where they need to stop what's going on in their country. But a problem I want to emphasize is you're going to have to stop them from coming out of the river onto land. Now, how do you want to do that?
I couldn't agree more. That is the serious problem, which is why we need to make sure that we're addressing it from the Mexico border side, that we're actually not only monitoring, but that we're measuring on the Mexico side before they actually get into the river, before they actually get across the river, and before they set foot on U.S. soil. But I think it starts way before that. Again, we've got to work with Mexico to secure their southern border. They had a secure border before 2008. They've changed their policies. Again, you have to have the president engaged in those head-to-head heads of states issues to negotiate that type of system. Secondly, we've got to work with those three major countries that are sending the majority of the immigrants, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, that we're seeing this huge influx. Again, we need to send the same message to their countries and let them know that this, what they see right now on having a free permission to come into the United States isn't going to happen. So we've got to put a stop to it from that standpoint as well. So again, the president needs to have those heads of state discussions. We need to put the parameters in place, and then we need to expedite the court system. For those that actually do get across the border, we've got to expedite the court system so that we can send them back.
Vicky, up next. I'm sorry, let's go first to Al in Ohio. Hi there.
Hi, Pedro. I'm getting a little crosstalk. Something wrong on your end?
You're on the line now, so go ahead.
I had a couple of things, comments. First, shout out to my Building 7 friends out there. And a question for you, Pedro. C-SPAN always advertises that they're provided as a service by the cable companies, yet you can't get C-SPAN on basic cable at all. And I'll just leave that right there. And a question for the congressman. Are you the gentleman that was a comedian some years ago with puppets?
No, slight misspelling of the last name. That's Jeff Dunham. I'm Jeff Denham.
Vicky up next. This is Vicky from Florida, Republican line. Good morning. Vicky, are you there? Okay, let's move on to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Democrats line. This is Christian. Hi.
Hi, good morning. I have a question. Now, this gentleman, I believe he said he is an almond farmer. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, let me ask him a question. Have you ever taken subsidies for your farm? And if so, why? And if you're worth $1 million, why would you take subsidies? Or, hello?
Well, you're on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't take subsidies. No, my almond crop, almonds are a good crop to have right now. It's been a great way to raise my kids, farming the way that I grew up. Small family farm, no subsidies. Thank you for the question.
The president makes a push, the White House makes a push for infrastructure. First, what do you think about this effort that he's making? How does it affect California, especially where you live?
We've got to get a highway bill. I mean, right now we're dealing with a situation where if funding stops, many of the states that all the states that receive transportation funding, some of which have extreme weather conditions, this is their building time. So if you stop building for a month or 2 months, it completely shuts down the system, and they have those ongoing projects for the next year. So we've got to get a short-term bill done, but we're looking forward to having a long-term bill done that not only has secure funding, so we have a full 5-year funding bill, but certainly one for my state. I mean, we've always been a donor state. We'd like to be able to keep more of our own money and utilize it to fix not only our freeways that are falling apart, but our rail infrastructure. We're one of those states that has a lot of ports and a lot of goods movement. We are the largest agriculture state. So we've got a lot of goods that move from west to east. We need to make sure that we're improving infrastructure across the nation.
What's the best way to fund these efforts? Would it be increasing the gas tax, or are there other ways that do you think that could be better ways to fund the highway transportation?
I think there are other ways. I think the challenge with the gas tax is already people are paying way too much at the pump. I think it's an unfair tax, but I also think that the gas tax, with new technologies, it just is not keeping up. So right now, our gas tax funds a 2-year bill, which we need 5 years worth of funding for. So we've got to look at new sources of revenue. Rather than going to the pump, we're looking back of the pump to look at new oil revenues. We're going to become a nation that is energy independent. We ought to do so by utilizing that oil and natural gas and being able to have that help us to fulfill that cost.
One more call. This is Sandy from Texas, Republican line.
Can you hear me?
Go right ahead.
Okay. I'm calling about the agricultural thing. I understand that Australia has completely mechanized, except for strawberries, their agriculture, and that if some of the profits could be used for machines to get the almonds. I understand the only thing that can't be is strawberries, so maybe we should use.
Caller, you there?
Yes,
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
I can hear other people.
It's okay. Finish your thought.
Well, I'm just saying that every town in the United States, I understand, has a Mexican gang now. Of over 100,000 people, every single city. And we had a 4-year-old girl killed by a Mexican gang here. And we have 100,000 people, just a small town, Abilene is. And we had a 4-year-old girl that was sleeping in her bed and was shot by drive-by shooters that were mad at her brothers who were Mexican gang members. So, we need to do something. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you. Well, first of all, on the farming standpoint, I grow almonds. It is completely mechanized. We do everything from shake the trees to allow the almonds to drop, to vacuum them up, and then put them into a truck. So we're very, very mechanized. We're seeing more crops become more mechanized as we move forward. Lettuce, strawberries, there are quite a few that are still not mechanized. But I think as we move forward in the future, you're going to find new technologies and abilities to be able to do that. We do lead the rest of the world in new technologies, especially within agriculture as well. So I would say that we will be on the forefront of that. But in the process, we've still got to make sure that we are still providing food to the rest of the nation and to the rest of the world. Milk would be another example. The dairy industry, you can't not milk cows any day of the week. So they have to have a consistent labor force to make sure that every single day those cows are getting milk so that they don't get sick. So from an agriculture perspective, we will always need some type of labor. But I agree, fixing this overall situation, the gangs are getting worse. The challenges within our community where people aren't reporting crimes is getting worse, which is why we need to solve the problem. Again, having people pass background checks, having them have legal status, whether that's provisional or having an extension of the visas. 40% of the people that have come here that are part of that 11 million came here on legal visas. And so we need to take a look at that visa network and call those people back in and make sure that they're not only in a position where they can be employed, but in a position where they're also not afraid to come out of the shadows and report crimes. We've got to get a safer community, and we've got to stop the gangs. And I think by solving our immigration policy, it will help to do that. If you're a gang member, you're not going to get a provisional status. You're not going to get a legal status. You're not going to get a pathway to citizenship. So we've got to be able to have those background checks, find out who's breaking our laws, find out who's victimizing our community, and then we either incarcerate them or we are able to deport that small amount that are actually preying on our community.
What's the likelihood that something legislatively will happen to deal with the border situation before Congress goes on its summer break in a few weeks?
I think we've got to do something immediately. The summer break starts August 1. That's when we're back home in our districts working for a month, and then we come back in September to Washington, D.C. We can't let a day go by, let alone a month. There are too many people crossing our border today, and every day that number not only grows, but every day more people surge across because the word is spreading that our border is open. So we've got to do something immediately, both on the appropriations bill as well as securing the border. I think that we're going to get that done this year. Whether or not we can get it done in the next 2 weeks will be a challenge.
Representative Jeff Denham of California joining us to talk about immigration and border-related issues. Thanks for your time.